Larry Cohen's a writer, producer, and director who's been working in the entertainment industry since the 60s. After directing 3 blaxploitation films, Bone, Black Caesar, and Hell Up in Harlem, he decided to switch to horror with the now classic It's Alive. Cohen had a knack for the genre, and most of his movies after that were horror. In the early 80s, he was at a restaurant in New York having lunch with an actress, and noticed actor Michael Moriarty. He started to tell the actress of how wonderful an actor he was, and Moriarty overheard. Cohen spoke to him and told him he had the perfect script for him, a movie he'd written called Q. Moriarty took the script and liked it so much he called him the next day to say he'd do the film. After that, Cohen started doing his casting for films at restaurants. There was a popular hangout in New York where everyone from Robert De Niro to various directors would eat. Cohen even had lunch a few times with a young unknown actor, Kevin Spacey. He used to eat at the restaurant, and if someone like Paul Sorvino or Danny Aiello came in, he'd chat with them and try to convince them to be in one of his movies. After working on Perfect Strangers and special effects, Cohen was trying to figure out his next film. The idea for the stuff came to him where many great ideas come from, while he was in the shower. In the 80s, consumerism was running rampant, and he wanted to make a movie that would satirize it. People don't like preachy movies, so he decided to put the satire within a clever horror comedy. After thinking about things like cigarettes, medications, and fast food, he came up with The Stuff. There was an old saying, I scream, you scream, we all scream for ice cream. So he thought, what if the ice cream we ate started eating us? The Stuff's about an organism that's found within the earth that's 100% delicious and 100% addictive to humans. As you eat it, you crave more and more, and it eats you from the inside out, until finally when you're completely empty, and it exits your body. The Stuff's passed off as a new taste sensation, and even though the people that are distributing it know how dangerous it is, they don't care because they're making money hand over fist. He considered the creation of the Stuff was Earth's way of fighting back against the humans that were destroying the planet. What better way to end a species than going through their food supply? He also took inspiration for the Stuffies, humans under control of the Stuff, from Invasion of the Body Snatchers. He came up with the tagline, "This stuff, are you eating it or is it eating you?" He wrote the script and knew Michael Moriarty would be perfect for the lead as industrial saboteur Mo Rutherford. He was looking for a leading lady and hired Andrea Marcovici, an actress who had mostly done TV work at the time. She was a big fan of Moriarty and was excited to work with him. While casting for the role of Jason, he had an interview with Brian Bloom. He felt Brian was too old for the role, and he suggested his younger brother Scott. Scott auditioned and was perfect. Cohen cast Scott as Jason and also hired Brian to play his brother. He loved the duo's eyes, so he made sure to showcase them in the film. Jason's mother was played by Colette Blunnigan. She was the girl in the now iconic popcorn scene from Diner. Cohen wrote the character of Chocolate Chip Charlie as a spoof on Wally Amos, better known as the cookie mogul, Famous Amos. Cohen interviewed a then up-and-coming Arsenio Hall and wanted him for the role, but the studio insisted on casting someone more famous, so they hired Garrett Morris from Saturday Night Live. The store owner was James Dixon, who was a friend of Cohen's. They were in the Army together, and Cohen cast him in almost all of his movies. Cohen also brought in Danny Aiello and Paul Sorvino. With a roughly $1.7 million, they began filming in upstate New York. The movie was set to be distributed by New World Pictures. Moriarty worked with Cohen and expressed how he wanted to change the character of Mo Rutherford. He was rewritten to come across as a dim-witted southerner who's actually smarter than everyone around him.
Well, you know, Mr. Rutherford?
Yes, sir?
I don't think you're quite as dumb as you appear to be.
No one is as dumb as I appear to be.
Cohen's used to rewriting scripts on the fly and even while filming, so this was no big deal. Marcovici was having a hard time with Moriarty because he ad-libbed almost every line of dialogue. Cohen wanted Moriarty to look different than he did in Q, so he bought him a very expensive toupee, which Moriarty hated. The prologue was shot at a factory in upstate New York. It started snowing, and even though they weren't set up to film in the snow, they couldn't pass up the opportunity. Some of their electrical equipment exploded because of the moisture, but the end result was worth it. They filmed numerous spoof commercials about the stuff that they intended on peppering throughout the movie. Originally they were going to cut to some of the spots right after the prologue, but the studio insisted they jump right into the story and show the ads later. The speedboat scene was almost a disaster. They loaded it up with the actors in a Steadicam, and as the boat moved further out into the harbor, it began to sink because of the weight. They managed to make it to the yacht just as the boat was filling with water. For the commercial scene, they were shooting in a real furrier showroom. The owner let them film there, as well as use some of his models and coats. What Cohen didn't know was that this was in the same building as the New Jersey office of the Teamsters. They were filming a non-union movie, and the Teamsters were none too happy. While they were filming, the Teamsters filled the set. Cohen panicked and started dancing around singing "I Wish I Was a Teamster" to the tune of "I Wish I Was a Rich Man" from Fiddler on the Roof. The Teamsters laughed and said he had the biggest set of balls they'd ever seen. One came over and said, "Go ahead, shoot your movie, kid," and left them alone for the rest of their production. The stuffed truck driver and junkie at the end was played by Barry Shills, the associate producer. While filming one day, actor Eric Bogosian stopped by the set. He worked with Cohen in the past and did a free cameo as one of the grocery store clerks. They paid Clara Peller, the Where's the Beef lady, $15,000 to do her cameo as the Where's the Stuff lady, along with Abe Vigoda.
That's nice. Where's the stuff?
One day when Paul Sorvino was working, his daughter Mira stopped by. She was 18 at the time and hadn't gotten into acting yet. They were shooting the big showdown at the factory, and Cohen asked her if she wanted to be in the film as one of the yellow-suited stuffies. He knows she's in the movie somewhere, he's just not sure which one's her. Cohen worked with Rick Baker on It's Alive and wanted to hire him for the stuff, but he was already contracted to another film. Baker suggested Steve Neal, someone he had worked with in the past. Neal was in charge of making a monster out of something that was essentially fluid, but to do it in a way that wasn't a rip-off of the Blob. They worked in a variety of methods, including miniatures and stop motion. For the stop motion, they hired David Allen, who worked with Full Moon on the Puppet Master films and won an Oscar for his work on young Sherlock Holmes. For the miniatures, they hired Jim Danforth, who worked on The Thing, The Never-Ending Story, and The Wizard of Speed and Time. The stuff itself was many things depending on the scene. When the cast had to eat it, it was either whipped cream or melted Haagen-Dazs ice cream. Other times it was yogurt, shaving cream, liquid cement, foam latex, and fire extinguisher foam. The foam was made out of ground-up fish bones and stunk like it. In the scene where the factory explodes, everyone was covered with the stuff. They were filming near the Hudson River, and it stunk so bad they jumped in to wash it off. For the big scene with Chocolate Chip Charlie, they had numerous heads made of Garrett Morris. Each one had the mouth grow larger and larger. The stuff coming out was a hand puppet controlled by Neal. Cohen says he still has one of the Garrett Morris heads in his closet. For the scene where the stuff moves up the wall, they did this using the same rig used in Wes Craven's A Nightmare on Elm Street. The device is a giant clamp that holds the room in place with a fixed camera. They then rotate the room around to make it appear as if something's defying gravity. When Nicole and Jason are out running the stuff, the room was composited with a miniature and the stuff was poured in. The breaking glass and electricity were both optical effects. After filming, Cohen edited the film himself. The studio wasn't happy because they thought they were getting a horror film, but instead got a horror comedy. They wanted blood, guts, and gore, but that's not the kind of movie this is. Since the studio wanted them to remove some of the stuff ads in the movie, Cohen had a brilliant idea. He wanted to run the spots on TV like they were real commercials. Then after a few weeks, played the trailer for the film. The studio didn't like the idea and just marketed the film traditionally. A shame really, this could have been one of the earliest cases of viral marketing. The movie was sent to critics, and much to Cohen's surprise, the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Unfortunately, due to bad luck, no one saw the reviews. The movie was released in New York this same day that they were hit with a hurricane. The newspapers with all the positive reviews were never delivered that day. This was back before movies were simultaneously released across the US, and they were released in stages in various markets. So having a failed opening in New York hurt. Over the years, when it hit home video, word of mouth spread, and it became a very successful cult film. Cohen continued directing and worked with Moriarty 3 more times. In a sad way, life imitated art a few years after the film. In the stuff, Chocolate Chip Charlie was bought out of his own company by the shareholders. In 1989, Famous Amos quit his own company after the shareholders demoted him to the level of spokesperson. The stuff is a fantastic horror comedy with brilliant satire. It goofed on the excessive consumerism of the 80s and how companies were more than happy to sell us addictive poison. Cohen wasn't happy with the way the studio marketed the picture. They sold it as a straight horror, when really it was more of a comedy. After the film was completed, Cohen had tons of leftover stuff containers that he planned to give away. I was lucky enough to get one and even had him sign it. Cohen said he's against the movie being remade. If they were to do it today, the stuff would be CG as opposed to stop motion and would lose all of its charm. A large part of the enjoyment of this stuff is how much fun it is. You take that out and all you have is a horror movie that's trying to convince you that ice cream is scary.
You know, Mr.
Rutherford, Mo Rutherford.
Yeah.
You know why they call me Mo?
No, why?
Because every time people give me money, I always want more.